We are going to hear 3 arguments today, starting with the state of Ohio versus, is it Adams?
We call it Adams Deli, it may be Adamas, but it's...
Adams Deli and Grocery, and Raphael Cole. That's case number 18CA011320. And there was no brief filed, so the only argument we'll be hearing is from Attorney Gronsky today on behalf of the state of Ohio. You will have 15 minutes to present your argument, and we've read the briefs and are prepared to proceed if you are, sir.
Thank you. May it please the court, your honors, Richard Gronsky for the state of Ohio through the Lorain County Prosecutor's Office. This is the second time that this case has been up here. The first time the court found that the findings of fact and conclusions of law of the trial court were not quite sufficient, and then remanded for further proceedings on that, which the trial court did. So here we are back again a second time, pretty much the same facts. The state believes that the additional findings of fact and conclusions of law of the trial court do not justify the negation of forfeiture of the 3 bank accounts, 1, the personal account of Raphael Cole, and 2 business accounts of Adams Deli. And I'll go into that a little bit later. Adams Deli was a small, hole-in-the-wall type of food store that specialized in Hispanic type of vegetables, rice, things like that to benefit the Hispanic community. There was only 1 employee, Your Honors, that's Raphael Cole, and he is related to the owner, Francisco Adams, who owns Adams Deli. And Francisco Adams was the signator on the 2 business accounts. Now, they were both charged with 10 counts of welfare fraud, and Cole was found guilty at the bench trial of 5 out of the 10. The specific 5 were due to a confidential informant buying something, it was kind of hard to deny, of inappropriate items through the electronic benefit transfer, or EBT, card. The other 5 were pretty broad charges, saying that it was a continuous course of conduct over a statutory period of time. Somehow, and so I've been in the business 33 years, the deli was found not guilty of all counts, even the same counts that Raphael Cole was found guilty of selling inappropriate items. Be that as it may, for a forfeiture, you don't have to have a conviction. There just has to be an offense and some type of nexus between the 2. This was 2012 when the civil forfeiture was brought.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I understand your argument, but I guess one of the questions I had is, when you're talking about, yes, there doesn't have to be a conviction, but what if there is an acquittal on what you're trying to forfeit? Those are 2 different things.
The code is silent, but it says you don't have to have, a charge or be a conviction. So I guess an acquittal would be the same. That's, as we all know, not guilty doesn't mean innocent. It means not guilty. The standard on the forfeiture, preponderance of the evidence, of course, on the felony case, beyond a reasonable doubt. So the state, I believe, can still go forward under 2981.05, and at that time in 2012 it was preponderance of the evidence. That has changed, but I did note that in the brief. Now, the Ohio investigative agent, Jeff Yarian, found evidence that they were using their EBT account to allow the purchase of improper items. That would be like beer, hot food items, cigarettes, toilet paper, things like that you can't buy on your EBT card, newspapers, etc. As a basis of that, they charged 3 people, using a 4th person as a confidential informant, to go in and buy the actual items under surveillance of the Ohio Investigative Unit Food Stamp Division. The other 3 people were charged and were convicted of improper use of their EBT by the same judge, Judge Ewers here. So he knew that they were convicted. He heard, he got the PSI, he knew the background of that when this forfeiture case was argued. We used the transcript the bench trial as the evidence. We didn't want to have to retry the whole case, and both parties stipulated to the transcript and all the exhibits in the criminal case in this civil forfeiture case. Now, the 3C's bank accounts, all with Fifth Third Bank, were identified by the forfeiture petition, in the answer, Agent Yarian, Defendant Cole testified, and Mr. Adams. Cole's personal account, where he got his Adams Deli paycheck direct deposited, that was his account. So anything he earned from Adams Deli was going into that account. So the state's argument is, if he's ripping off the taxpayer and everything else, making these improper sales under EBT, he's definitely benefiting from them, getting paid by Adams Deli, which is going into that account. The state doesn't have to prove every single dollar in there. The state just has to show, is there an excess, is there a pattern? And there was a pattern.
Counsel, what about the fact that the court found that,
That's right.
basically, what about the fact that the court found like an innocent third party basically had contributed money to that account?
That is the part of my fourth argument, but I can jump to that. There is absolutely no evidence other than Raphael Cole, and what do we know about him? He's a liar. He was convicted. He is doing these things. 4 people testified, actually 5 people testified to that. I bought it from him. He's a sole employee, so we know he's doing that. The fact that he says, "Oh, my daughter won the lottery and she gave that to me." So, if you look at gifts, he had total control over that account, and there was no credible evidence in this case that any lottery money was deposited in there.
Well,
If it is, he's a sole.
Did the daughter make a claim for the?
No, and that's another point in my brief, thank you, Your Honor. After publication, after notice and all that, she never made a claim that it was her money. Matter of fact, Cole testifies, she gave it to me, so that becomes his money.
Well, it becomes his money, but that doesn't mean it's, illegal profit.
No, but the thing is, Your Honor, there is no evidence of that other than Cole saying it happened.
Right, but here's the thing, what do we do about the fact that a trial judge said, I heard this testimony and obviously felt it was credible?
With no other evidence, I would say that's beyond the manifest weight of the evidence. I mean, there was a 4-year discovery period, and the state of Ohio, if there was something, as a matter of fact, there was asked, where's the document? Oh, my attorney has it. Oh, really? We never, the state of Ohio never got it, and Paul Griffin, who was the assistant prosecutor, brought that up under cross-examination. So, you can't say that, oh, it's commingled by an innocent owner when you have no basis for an innocent owner. We don't know when it was deposited. He didn't know when she won the lottery, anything else on this account, but all of a sudden that becomes credible against all the manifest weight of the state's evidence. And what we have, the first 2 arguments, manifest weight, which can be combined here, is that we have actual state documents showing that the Adams Deli was paid in 2011 $413,917 in EBT food stamp exemptions, while on their taxes they only reported $150,298 in food stamp exemptions. What happened to that $263,000 difference on there? There was no explanation or no evidence presented by respondents as to what that happened. These are official state documents that this court can review. That's how much was paid. And if you look at the size of Adams Deli or their EBT, similar sized stores, they report about 20 to 28% of their EBT food stamp exemption redemptions. Adams Deli was on par with Walmart. This store about the size of this courtroom was doing as much business as Walmart.
So, I guess the question I have in regard to all this evidence and so forth, in the trial court, in regard to Adams or Adame's Deli, said that it was acquitted, so therefore he's not going to be able to forfeit the money. So if that's against, if that is not just, not against the weight of the evidence, but it is a legal error, if that's a legal error, that's the only basis that he used in not giving the money or forfeiting the money to the state, I hate to say it, but wouldn't that be something we have to send it back again for?
I mean, so what was the last
Wouldn't
part?
that be something we have to send it back again for because it was a legal error?
No, this is a de novo review, and if, based upon everything here, it finds that this court, under 2981.5, there's also .2 and .3 that's gonna be relevant to this. If the trial court really just lost its way against the manifest weight of the evidence and direct the court to forfeit the entire amount.
Except that if there was an error of law and the court didn't even consider the evidence because the court didn't think it could consider the evidence because he thought that once the defendant was acquitted, that the law provided that he couldn't be convicted.
Trial court doesn't say that though. It just makes a broad assumption that, oh, because he was acquitted, you can't take it. That's not what the code says.
Well, I know.
It's a separate action, obviously, and if the court did do that, they didn't consider it. However, they did convict, all the people who testified before it of food stamp fraud. They convicted Raphael Cole of the 5 counts, yet didn't convict Adams Deli of those exact same 5 counts, where the confidential informant went in there. Regardless, Your Honors, both Adams Deli and as a corporation and Raphael Cole, they can't even be defined as innocent owners based upon the evidence that was presented to the trial court. Obviously, Raphael Cole is not an innocent owner, and if a court can extrapolate and can look at the broad circumstances, here is seeing the forest for the trees. There is welfare fraud going on here. Mr. Adams admits in 1 month, in January, which is part of the forfeiture period on there, they took in EBT cards, and we have the evidence to show that, I believe it was $32,000 and change in electronic benefit transfers, when their whole gross sales, everything, that is not part of it was $34,000. That was admitted by Francisco Adames, and it's cited in my brief. That alone, added to the missing $263,000 as far as showing where did this money come from, where are the sales on there, proves the state's case that the welfare fraud was going on, that both Raphael Cole, the sole employee, related to the owner, and the owner of Francisco Adames, this was a big welfare ripoff, Your Honors. And it's curious to note that while they proclaimed their innocence, 1 year after this investigation, Adams Deli went bye-bye. If it was so profitable, other than the welfare fraud, why is it in existence today? And if they say, well, you froze our bank accounts. Whoa, we froze approximately, I think it was $15,000 total. They were raking in hundreds of thousands in illegal profits here. And one of the main things for forfeiture, Your Honor, as you all know, is for restitution to the victim. That's first before any type of forfeiture to, in this case, the victim is the state of Ohio, any type of forfeiture to law enforcement trust accounts. Here, the Ohio taxpayer has been ripped off at least in the tens of thousands. I will gather that it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars at that time, and that should be reimbursed after the cost of bringing this civil action is reimbursed to the prosecutors. That should be going to the SNAP account, which is the welfare where this money was being paid out of. I think in this case, I have seen welfare fraud prosecuted such cases before. Nothing so egregious as this. And even though Adams was found not guilty on here, this is a separate action. It's a civil forfeiture action. And the admissions of Francisco Adames on his 2 Fifth Third accounts, as well as Raphael Cole, who had direct deposit, it was a nexus from the business accounts right to his paycheck. So as he's ripping off the taxpayer, making his illegal sales, he is profiting from it, and that money, his paycheck, is going into that Fifth Third account. testifies as such. So I would ask that this court reverse the decision as cited in the brief, September of 2016 decision, which only forfeited $105, which are the 5 controlled buys, and forfeit the entire 3 accounts for the purpose of restitution to the SNAP program of the state of Ohio. Okay, glad to take any questions.
Any further questions, Judge Carr?
No.
Judge Hensel? All right, thank you very much for your presentation today. The court will take the matter under advisement and issue a decision in due course. The clerk of courts will certainly mail you a copy of the court's decision on the day it's released, and as you probably know, the opinions are also posted on the Supreme Court of Ohio's website. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you, Your Honors. Have a good day.